On this cold morning. I'm not from Arizona, so it always cracks me up when I see that it's 60 degrees and people have their down coats on. It's an interesting phenomenon for me. But anyway, we are so glad that you are here to join this event today. The Francis McClellan Institute is just an amazing unit that is the leader of our research in our school. So the work that they do in research is just amazing under the direction of Andrea Romero. She pulls together really great faculty from not only our unit but from across campus and does beautiful things. And what I think is even more beautiful is how she connects with community. So many of you are from the community instead of from campus, and that's a strong indication that Andrea is getting done what she wants to do. So I can't stay, but I wanted to welcome you. I'm the director of the Norton School, and I'm really honored to be that director because I have great people. So enjoy your day, and Andrea is going to take over now. So thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I think you all know me. I'm Andrea Romero. I'm the director of the Francis McClellan Institute. I'm really happy to be here today for Sally to give this workshop with you about community-university collaborations on securing and administering grants. So at the Francis McClellan Institute, we are a research institute. Our goal is to support and provide resources to researchers, but also to disseminate research in a way that reaches not only within the ivory tower, but outside those walls. So I'm really proud to work with our Family Advisory Council members who represent all different spectrum of people working with children, youth, and families in Arizona. We're so happy to see so many of you here today. I hope you all have a chance to connect with the other professors and students who are here as well. Our mission here is to honor Francis McClellan. She was a business leader and philanthropist. She had a great affinity for math and science, and she was also a wonderful advocate for women, for children, for people with disabilities, and a great advocate, especially for immigrant families. So we'd like to let you know about a couple of our upcoming events. We have an event tonight that we're co-sponsoring with Ben's Bells, and I see Jeanette is here today, so if you wanted to say hello. So tonight, 7 p.m. at the Loft, it's on social justice parenting with Mako Fitz Ward. I'm really excited. I'm definitely going to be there. I encourage you to come, spread the word with other folks. We have a very wonderful speaker series, the Tuberville Speaker Series. So we have faculty from all over Arizona who come and talk about their research. Dr. Lopez will be speaking on Friday, February 2nd about asset pedagogies with youth. We have Dr. Francine Gachupin, who will be here on Friday, February 16th to talk about Native American health disparities. And then we have Dr. Casanova, who will be here Friday, March 16th to talk about Latino youth educational experiences. If you can't make it in person to these at the McClellan Park building in room 402, you can watch it live streamed on Facebook, and we also archive them on our website. Some ways to get in touch with us are through our website. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, so you can follow all of our updates, see what's going on, learn about the new research that's coming out or the exciting things that our graduate students are doing. So I've had the great opportunity to work with Sally Stevens for many years. We worked on grants together. I've seen her in action in the community. And I can tell you, you are all very lucky. This is like a master class this morning. So please ask lots of questions. Really, bring issues that you are struggling with to the group so we can learn from them together. Dr. Sally Stevens is a professor in Gender and Women's Studies. She's also the former director for the Southwest Institute for Research on Women, CIRO. She has a really expansive background in working with grants of all sorts, not only federal grants like NIH, SAMHSA, Department of Justice, but also local and state grants. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here. It's okay.
Is that me? It's always my fault. Take credit for the good and the bad. So yes, welcome this morning, and I'm hoping with the group size that we have here, that we can be discussion amongst ourselves, and just ask a question, or if you have examples of strategies that's worked for you in your organizations, just please raise your hand, contribute to the conversation. I am an expert, I think, in this area. Probably touched well over $200 million worth of grant collaborations over 23, 28 years. But I see so many people in this room who have just as much expertise as me. So I welcome everybody's input. Just quickly, if we can go around and just say who we are and which agency, that might help me out. Just like the 15-second introduction. And Sally Stevens, I'm with the University Southwest Institute for Research on Women.
I'm Melissa Barnett. I'm faculty in the Norton School and FMI.
Sarah Asher, in the Welfare Partnership. Morning, Teresa Rollins, United Way, on the left.
Good morning, Monica Brinkoff. I work at Child Parent Center for the Head Start.
Hello, I'm Shannon Ryan, and I'm actually in Norton School and in Norton. Good morning, I'm Erin Lyons, also at Child. Good morning, I'm Allison Gerhart. I work here at the Forestry and Strong in the John Hill Center, and also the Leadership Adoption.
Good morning, I'm Kathy Brown. I'm a PhD student in Mexican American Studies, and I'm also a PhD in
I'm Danielle Smith, and I'm with Public Health
Ability and educational studies.
Same place.
Marty, Penny Grossman, Associate Director at Magnificent Investment Center at the White House.
I'm Chelsea from YWCA and I'm also on the board with
Good morning, Skylar McCoy. I'm a science in Norton School and we work with Best Off on their
Anjanette Murray from Best Off.
Good morning, James Gray.
In the White House.
Thank you so much and welcome again. So I talked to Elise and she said there was going to be about 20 people here. I thought I was going to first divide the handout up into a PowerPoint. The handouts are great for you. You can take them with you then and have them and copy them or use pieces of them if they are helpful to you. But what I wanted to do is just kind of get started. What you have is sort of the working handout that I'll be going through on the topics that were advertised in the flyer. So we'll start with that. And then you have a couple other handouts that as we go through, I'd like to talk about. One is the pivot that looks up for, you can really find a number of thousands of grant opportunities on. It's really been a good thing for us at Zero to use. And then also a handout for writing grants with your collaborators, something that has helped us organize. Because we don't have a grant writer. I don't know, maybe some other agencies actually have grant writers, but I am the grant writer, or the principal investigators or whoever's leading the grant are the grant writers who get some budget help and organizational help that's not really most of the time. So I use a cheat sheet or a letter kind of introducing the grant when time allows, because sometimes we don't have time to do that. But anyway, so we'll start with that, and I have a few pass-arounds too that you can pass things around. You can take a look at if you want them. You can have them, but it's a lot of pages there, so probably not worth copying. But when talking about your grants and talking about sort of where you want to go as an agency or as the university or a department within the university or as a professor within the university,
for a community-based organization, thinking ahead a couple of years, where do you want to go? Like what really is your agency's mission, and what have or a new area that you want to work in that people in your organization are really excited about. So I often talk to the researchers, the grad students getting their PhDs or researchers at Zero, saying, well, what is your individual resume, right? What do you bring to the table that you could then write a grant for or develop a project in collaboration? So think about yourself. But I think in the same way, we talk about Zero's kind of agency resume and kind of where we want to go. We revisit that really with our advisory board, which Amy sits on, and we kind of look at that, what are we missing, where are we going, what do we have that will substantiate the kind of partnerships that we want to, and the work that we want to do. So if you want to take a look just on this section of constructing your agency resume, what I always think about is kind of long-range planning versus strategic planning versus an agency resume. And when I think about long-range planning, I think about kind of like 2 to 3 years out. Where do we want to be in 2 to 3 years? What kind of projects and collaborations do we want to have? And that's just kind of a general big umbrella. Like, this is where I want to go. This is where we want our agency or our department to go, our research institute. And then the strategic plan is sort of putting the nuts and bolts to it, right? Trying to figure out, okay, how do we strategize for that? So if you want to go into a particular area that you don't have any expertise in, how do you build that agency resume, right? How do you build those collaborations if you haven't collaborated with different groups in Pima County or Southern Arizona? So the strategic plan is much more detailed. And that will kind of depend, again, about how much of your agency resume you have in that area, and also thinking about the funding agency. Like for SAMHSA, a lot of times they will want 2 years of data, right? They want you to show, hey, you've been in the field for a couple of years, and do you have data? Do you have some expertise? You don't need a lot. For NIH, if you have a lot of expertise, you've got publications and presentations, and you've got data to support your application, you can write for what they call an R01. I believe you've all had a workshop here presented on NIH, so I won't spend too much time on that. But in NIH, they have different sizes of grants and different ways of getting grants. So an R01 is $500,000 a year for 5 years. So $2.5 million, but you really have to have a strong agency resume for that. But you could do an R21, which is 2 years, $275,000, but you still need some data to be able to apply for that. And these can be great university community partnerships, right? It doesn't have to be all within the university. And then you have your new investigator awards, like $50,000. So again, it's kind of thinking about where do you want to go as an agency and or as a university department, and who do you want to collaborate with, and then thinking about the project that you want to go for or the funding mechanism and what they require. So maybe you'll partner, maybe a community-based agency will say, well, we don't really have that expertise, but I know that the Francis McClellan Center does, right? Or I know CIRO does, or the College of Public Health, or the College of Education, and Disability Resources, they probably have the expertise. So you look for those partners. So I think I'll give you an example from my work back in, I can date myself here a little bit, but back in 1995, 96, I'd been doing so much work on pregnant and postpartum women and their children, and pretty much substance abuse and HIV, mental health, and I wanted to work with adolescents. I kept thinking, done this work with women and children substance abuse, and gosh, I think I might be able to make a bigger difference if I started younger, right? Instead of like working with women who've already, had a substance abuse problem for 10 years and have 3 kids and are pregnant, maybe if I want to really start working with younger people, adolescents. I don't have a portfolio of that, right? But my institute at Zero did really have a portfolio for that. So I thought, okay, 2 years. I'm going to have a big grant. I'm going to have a multi-million-dollar grant in 2 years on adolescents. How do I get there? Who do I partner with? How do I make that happen? I'm excited. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to figure it out. So I thought, okay, that's my long-range plan. Now I got to kind of come up with some strategies to get there, right? And how do I build that agency resume? So I looked into the community, people that I work with, and actually Michelle Pito was over at Providence back then. And so I approached Providence and said, it was Fletcher at the time, Mary Shea and Michelle and a few other people, hey, I want to get into the adolescent field. Oh, Dr. Schwabel. So it was kind of funny. It's like reaching out to everybody kind of around the city, like, I don't have this resume, I want this resume, I want to move forward. And so I reached out and I said, what kind of data do you have? Or, what can we do that doesn't cost a lot of money? Because I was on a lot of soft funds back then. So I support my own salary. So anyway, we did a few kind of interesting projects. One of the things we did is, besides, just collaborating, is Dr. Schwabel had some small, tiny data set from El Hogar. Is that right? Is that how you say it? Yeah, that school, a school where you put on the 7 challenges. He's like, well, I got this little data set, and you want to take a look at it? I'm like, yeah, I can do that, and we can write a couple newsletter stories, we can do a presentation at a conference, we got to do things quick. So I can't maybe get a publication out of this by the time I want to write a grant, but I can do a lot of things to build my resume and yours. And then, Providence was also gracious enough to say, come look at our clinical data. And we could do an economic cost on our in-home program. And so, he said, I'll give you, because we're interested in building our resume too, we'll give you access to the data sharing agreement, which I'll pass around. So looking for those little avenues to build your resume, and if you don't have it, then looking for those collaborators in the community who are also eager to build those collaborations. And from there, we did build that collaboration. And another thing that I did is you have to think outside the box of where you can get data to build your resume. And one of the things I did is I took that pregnant and postpartum women's data, this huge NIDA grant, $3 million over 3 years, a huge SAMHSA grant. I think Kodak had the same grant, another $5 million over 5 years. But it was all adult data, right, in those grants. But I went through the assessments, and I said, what can I find to support adolescents? So I ran data on age of first drug use. We had some other instruments about trauma, age of first sex, age of first consensual sex. Who was a person that turned you got your first drugs from? So there's a lot of data on what happened to these women when they were teens, that even though they were adults, from 18 to 40, I was able to use that data to substantiate the need for adolescent programs. And I wrote grants based on that, and then I would title, you gotta get creative here, you gotta title your presentations, even though it's adult data, to reflect teens, right? So think creatively about the titles that you use. Okay, I'm a bit of a salesperson, right? But some of that is what you need to be to get these collaborations and these programs together and get funded. So the salesman, saleswoman that I am, I wrote titles like, I wrote one down, it was so funny, I went through my teenage life of drug-addicted women. The teenage life of drug-addicted women. I got that teenage in there, right? And I wrote, and that was the name of the presentation. It's hilarious. So, but it's true. It was true. So I did a lot of those kind of creative things where I used adult data, and I presented on and eventually wrote an article on things like the teenage life of drug-addicted women, which used all adult data. But you know, when reviewers are going in, how many people here have reviewed grants for SAMHSA, NIH, and AAA? Just a few. Okay, that's another great thing to do, is sit on a panel. I did that for NIAAA for 5 years. Oh my God, the workload was crazy, but I learned a lot. Anyway, that's off topic. But you know, these reviewers really do look at, you know, do you have the organizational capacity? Does the PI have the experience? You know, do they have the data? Have they been in the field? Can they pull this off? And so you want to get creative in advance of where you want to go, and take every opportunity, whether it's using a database that can provide you that kind of titles and data, you know, set, to the collaborations, to asking people to sort of, you know, do a data sharing agreement, something quick, because there's not a lot of money and there's not a lot of time. So I want you guys to think now, and there's some spaces to write that down, 3 areas that you would like to move forward, whether that's personally or as an agency. Like what is your long range plan? I won't ask you to do a strategic plan, but we'll think about that and how to build your resume. So for me, and it's kind of interesting because I know the Y does a lot of this work. It sounds like a lot of other people here. One of the things I'm interested in now, which is kind of a little tangential to what I do, is women in the workplace. How do we get women and their families economically employed at a reasonable level so they don't go back to the drug-addicted man or the domestic violence abusing man or the sex trafficker, but they can actually support. Not going to be super wealthy, but how do we get that? So I'm interested in that. I know, Michelle, you do a lot of work in that area, and there's probably a lot of other people here. If you, here's the saleswoman again. But if you're into that area and you want to collaborate, that's kind of what I want to do. You know, so I want to move into that area a little bit more. For our adolescents, I did a lot of work with pregnant teens, my Pregnancy Story Project, by the Ford Foundation. You know, what I see is if we can get women to have a livable wage, and teens, like 16, teenage mom, maybe to think about, you know, getting to be an electrician or some of those J-type careers. That'd be really cool. Yeah. That would be really cool. Anyway, so think, I'll just be quiet for a few minutes and think about where you guys want to go. You can do either, but I think if you're a grad student, so you're not really, you know, like a researcher within an organization other than a grad student, think about yourself of where you want to be in 2 years. And then how are you going to get there? How are you going to build your resume? You probably have it at your college, some people working in that area that you could reach out to for data. How do you get those presentations done? Or how do you rename presentations to, yeah.
I'll just go and plug for nonprofit. There is no shortage of nonprofits in Tucson. So no matter what your area of interest is, you're going to be able to find a nonprofit nonprofit that probably has a bunch of data that they don't know what to do with. And you know what I mean? And we're, that is, grants don't cover it, and we're always, and yet they require it. You know, they require you to show your outcomes, your impact, all of that. But there's no, they don't pay for it. You kind of have to scramble and figure out how to do it. So I just want to give those partnerships that we've had over the years with Zero have just been amazing with regards to collecting data that's useful and things that the university
And especially for an area, thank you, Michelle, especially for an area where the agency or the professor or the person doing the data wants to go into. Because I just before Christmas, I had an executive director of an agency come to me and say, you know, we don't have any publications on this project that's been ongoing for like 15 years, or they just got their third 5-year grant. Can you analyze the data and get a publication out on HIV? And I thought, I got so many of those, that's not going to build where I want to go. I've done that since 1988. I didn't want to be negative, but it was sort of like, that's just old hat. I can do that kind of in my sleep, and that's, I want to move a little bit in a different direction, a little bit of a Campbell's soup, vegetable soup, like you learn something a lot, it kind of gets a little old, right? Now some people in science, like they want to study the wing of a fly until, there's no more flies. But, for me, you probably got a little ADHD, but I seem to find an expertise that I want to move on and learn something that mind wants to learn something new. So, I haven't got that. I feel bad, but it's just like, I could do it, but you gave me some data on workforce, right? Because now that's a collaboration that meets both needs. And that's what we're looking for. That's what I'm looking for. You guys are. Does anybody want to share a couple of areas where you want to go? That's okay.
So I want to have enough data to get for Spencer and stuff, and a greater marginal education grant for our.
With the Balanced Wireless Grant Center. Yeah. Good. And so that would be great. I mean, I think Andrea obviously probably has a lot of that data. I probably have some of that data that we could look at. And so this would be for your dissertation. Do you want to collect new data? Or is it secondary data analysis? So if you're into the qualitative data and you're in an after-school program, right? You got lots of avenues there. I mean, even National Science Foundation that does hundreds of dissertation awards, fellowship awards. I'd look there. And also with National Science Foundation, they really like triangulation of the data. So NIH is much more quantitative with high-level statistics. And then SAMHSA, you never know, you got GIBRA. But then if you look at NSF, they like both qualitative and quantitative data. And observational data, and they're not necessarily, they like kind of a mix. It sounds like that. And they don't have to be really super high-level stats. You don't need to be a quantoid. So I would look there, and they have so many, I think, folks in gender and women's studies. Every year, we only take in about 4 grad students a year. I think we've gotten so many over there with NSF. And you could look specifically at those, but if you really frame it in terms of an after-school program, so it's education related, so think about how you frame your proposal. You got a good shot. Yeah.
So I have two for the end of life care partnership as part of the terms of a cohesive plan or broad-based plan to fundamentally change the way we talk about death, and two, to be the community resource for end-of-life care across cultures, population, and life journeys, and to create an international model for human-centered end-of-life care.
Wow, that's a beautiful idea. I love it. You know, I lost my parents about 5 years ago. It's rough and people don't like to talk about it. But, and I'm not as good on that type of funding agency. I think foundations would be very helpful in that area. But one person I think would be helpful, if I may say, Andrea, would be Prill Kuhn. Prill is on probably an advisory board, I don't know. She really helped. She was a great friend of Francis McClellan, and actually helped fund this, not this building, but their other building. And she's done a lot of work on end of life.
What's her last name?
Kuhn, K-U-H-N. You can probably get with Andrea on that. And she's set up trainings in Mexico on end of life care. So she's does cross-cultural work with end of life care, and because a lot of retirees go to Mexico, and kind of how to honor the person's life at the end of their life, and how to reach out with the family to make that happen. So she would be a great resource. I'll have to think about the funding on that.
We have a grant, you know, our starter grant. Is the
Starter
level-
grant is great.
Our level from Level Foundation and Community Foundation for $3 million, and it's spread across 10 organizations. So United Way is the backbone. We have Southwest Folk Alliance, we have Interfaith Communities, we have Arizona Hospital Association. Everybody got a little piece of the grant.
Right.
And now we're in the phase of how do we, you know, this started in July, and everybody's been furiously working to fulfill their pieces of this grant and working in silos really until now. So now I want to shift to the next phase of defining ourselves as a partnership and working together toward this common goal rather than working in silos, and then expanding the partnership to more community-based organizations. So how do you get more money for that and expand the partnership? You know, it's a unique area because I think quite literally it's the only one that impacts every human being on Earth. So a lot of potential. I think I just need to figure out how to get there.
And I think Amy might actually be a pretty good resource for building collaborations, because one of the grants that Amy wrote, oh, sorry, is this better? Yes. Okay, so Amy helped develop a consortium on human trafficking, 6 years, 7, 5 years ago, and then was able to get a large DOJ grant. But part of it is, how do we collaborate across agencies and across different cultures? So taking social service providers and the Tucson Police Department and ICE and all that, working together, very different cultures, I can guarantee you. And you did that very successfully. And I am kind of the winner of that in a way, involved as the evaluator. And one of the things I can share with you is we developed a Qualtrics survey to ask our stakeholders, just real small online stuff, I've got a little money, is how are we doing in terms of kind of 5 areas as collaborators? It'll remain anonymous. You know, how are we doing in terms of collaboration and sustainability and all that? And then we analyze that data and bring it back to our executive committee to say, what's the data say? Where do we need to go? What do we need to address in the next 6 months? Because I'd be happy to share that survey with you. Like I said, Matt, I would try Vitalist Health Foundation for here's another thing. Boy, I'm really off task here. I'm going right through my notes in a different order. So one of the things that you want to look for or could look for in a funding agency is with the large funding agencies, you kind of know where they're going and what their portfolio is. They announce it, they have big listservs, so you really understand kind of what their goals are. With a small funding agency, not a foundation, one of the changes directions just a little bit. The usual people or agencies that apply for those grants will apply or change a little course. But a lot of people say, oh, you know, they're into medical health. So that's not our area. But you never know, sometimes these little foundations will change course or change direction. And people write them off because 3 years ago they looked and it wasn't really in their bailiwick, right? So whenever a foundation changes courses a little bit, it's a great time to go in because they're not going to have any applicants, right? They're not like Robert Johnson or the Ford Foundation. You know, these are some of the smaller ones that you know, we just got, I think, 98,000. So small dollars, but very doable dollars. But they changed direction. They were all medical health, and then they decided that the social aspect of health was very important, and get some people on their board. And, you know, it's a great funding avenue. So they've got to kind of watch those things. Yeah.
I think part of the challenge in you know, getting everything from career to end of life, through career to retirement to end of life, when you start getting into the old aging population, just as you said earlier, oh, I want to go to adolescence, make a bigger change. Aging and end of life is not something people are getting really jazzed about, other than Sarah and I.
That's true.
So your thoughts on, you know, where to look in that aspect, and is anybody leading the way nationally or in terms of, besides NIH, I guess.
Well, just to add to that, one thought I've had, we are, you know, demographically, end of life, obviously, is going to happen most often to elders, but really it impacts everyone. And so if our goal is to fundamentally change the way we talk about death, then we need to expand that perspective and view. And in doing that, we need to shift to other populations beyond, I think, you know, and talking about the fact that it happens in the NICU, and it happens in you know, car accidents. It happens at our only level 1 trauma center in Tucson every single day. And people aren't prepared, they haven't talked about it. So I think, yeah, it's challenging because there's so much stigma associated with it in terms of communication. So how do we get into, how do we change that?
That social value.
And again, that's not my area of expertise as much, so I have to think beyond the Vitalist Health Foundation. But a couple of things come to mind is when we look, as much as I know from the adolescent perspective, about generations, is really, people really only look 2 generations behind or in front, right? So, like my kids they're really interested in my mom and dad, right? And very, you know, had to do their grieving process when they passed away, but did they really care about their great-grandparents they never met? You lose that, and same as you look forward, you know, I'm like, I raised my kids, I got great kids, thank God, knock on wood, right? But, and now I have 3 grandbabies, but, you know, once I get a little older, I can't really think beyond making sure those grandbabies are okay. And so you might be able to frame it as an intergenerational, look at, you know, like the 4 generations. And then for Tucson, I mean, just thinking regionally, is, you know, we're such the Sun Belt retirement area. I'm wondering if there could be some businesses or kind of some economics around if we make this a hub of a great place to, you know, retire and have that kind of family support built around it. You know, there may be some economic avenues for funding too. Okay, so anything else, otherwise I'll move on a little bit. Probably won't get through all these handouts, but yes.
Just real quick, I'm looking into research practice partnerships with between the College of Education and Banner for the hospital school program to reduce the inequality in children who are hospitalized and medical needs, because the state policy is 90 days. They don't get education until 90 days of anticipated lost learning, and it's only 4 hours a week. So the research practice partnerships is all about building trust. And there's some William T. Grant, who they give one nationally a year. And then the Spencer has one, and IES has one. So there's several. So I think one of the things to think about is how we can recast the same thing to multiple agencies and how to get savvy with that. So even if it's not specific to healthcare, children's healthcare and educational policy, I'd love to really hear about a little bit on kind of telling the same story, but doing it so you're not like reinventing yourself.
Right, and trying to reframe it or build, one of the things that I always like to do is collect a little extra data in a project that will build sort of, maybe not a 180, but maybe just a little bit off that will support the next grant. So while you're collecting data on those 3 grants that or 3 funding mechanisms, think about, what is the data telling you, and then maybe collect even a short, 7-item scale that will then provide maybe more information about well-being or student self-efficacy following this, and then come at it from empowering, from the self-efficacy side. So try to collect just a little bit more, think about your data, and then add a scale that then, when you sell it to the next funding agency, you've got some other data than what you sent to the other 3, right? So it's a little off the mark, but on the mark. Not too far away, not too far off, but just a little bit. Or, how has the educational intervention with the children in the hospital facilitated family well-being overall? Okay, so, and then the next grant you write is to talk about family well-being through educational innovations, something like that. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Everybody okay? Anybody need coffee? Sugar? All right. Oh gosh, let's see, how are we doing on time here? Oh, we're doing pretty good. All right. So we got page 1. Okay. Let's see what we got here. So some of this stuff, just, jump up, get some coffee, sugar, whatever you need. We're a small group here, so we're amongst friends. So some of this stuff I've already talked about, but I'm just going to kind of rattle through the next developing collaborations, because we've already talked a lot about it in the first section. But again, determine your competencies, skills, expertise that you need for your long-range plan, and whatever you don't have, think about how to get it, or what collaborators within the community or within the university probably have that expertise, and reach out to them. Go to coffee, have lunch, figure out what's going on. One of the things, a practice that I like to do is to start small with somebody that's really new, like putting on a panel presentation together, or doing a workshop like this together, or something else, because different agencies have different cultures, and different agencies, their personalities, right? And so it's kind of like a marriage, short-term marriage, that, if you're going to go for a 5-year grant, you really want to be bedfellows with this person, this agency that may be very patriarchal or very controlling, or is it more of a non-hierarchical feminist organization that has great ethical values and yet can't manage themselves out of a paper bag? They're just all over the place. So, you want to find the right partnerships, and sometimes you have the strength and sometimes the other group has the strengths. But, you know, jumping in on a $2.5 million grant for 5 years, you can't, you know, you're taking some risks there about performance. So if possible, and I don't do this all the time, so I jump in every once in a while because I can't help myself. But if I can and I have time, I like to sort of do things with other agencies on a small scale, maybe for a year in advance, or get that data and analyze it, see how that goes. I got one grant right now, I'll tell you, it's one and done. One and done. It's a 2-year grant, and it'll be done. So I won't say which one that is, but one and done. And it's not the topic. Anyway, and it's nobody here in Tucson. There you go. How's that? It's not done here. Okay, let's see. Start small. Discuss respective agencies' resume, including overlaps and gaps. Now, the overlaps can be a little bit troubling sometimes when you bring a bunch of people to the table and, you know, they have the same expertise and then they both want that piece of the project. So, I mean, sometimes if you have time, it's nice to go like serial, like start with one who you think is the best and then go instead of inviting everybody to the table. I had a great idea for a grant. This is another one of my loves. It's domestic violence and animals. We know women don't like to leave their animals, including their farm animals, behind to get out of relationships, right? So this is like 3 years ago. I really got data on domestic violence. They don't get a lot of data on animals, but I think this would be a great opportunity to really go into this. So I reached out to a few people, and we started having meetings, you know, just exploring the topic. And then some of those people said, hey, you know, so-and-so's doing that work over here. You know, I took initiative to invite them to the next meeting, and then here were 3 more people, and then this person said, you know what, so-and-so over at psychology should be over here doing this. It's great. All of a sudden, we had like 20 people around the table. And I'm thinking, and we don't really have the expertise for a $2.5 million grant. We're looking at something like an R21, 250,000, 25 people in the room. I'm not managing that. So I said, hey guys, apologies, but I'm still the executive director and my administrative time is killing me. And I just need to back off. If someone else wants to take the lead, it's fine. But I was just like, I need to get out of this because there's just now 25 people at a table for money that's very small. So you have to be careful of those kind of overlaps when there's too many overlaps. And then, you know, if there's a need for another agency, you know, of course, you know, bring them on if you can. So those are some of the kind of just working issues that come up or have come up for me in the past. And I think it's really good at the very onset to see what each agency wants to achieve. Again, we have different cultures. You know, you have the university folks, they need, you know, still need to publish or perish if you're a professor. The agencies may have a need to fill their strategic plan. You know, so there's different, and there are some people who say, you know, basically what we really need is to, we're just really into the well-being of children. We don't really need to have a curriculum out of this. Some other agencies are like, no, we really want to develop and test a curriculum that we've been working on, and that's what we want to achieve. So figure out in advance what is, if you had one thing out of this 5-year collaboration, what would that be? What would that look like? And that really helps to identify how you write the grant and how you know, give honor to everybody's, you know, needs. I think that's what's key for me to figure that out. Let's see. Here's another one: is establish a deadline to decide to partner or not. So doing that serial ask, because there's multiple agencies that serial works with in the community. You know, once in a while you'll have an agency that won't get back to you for a month, right? A lot of funding announcements are 45 days or a little bit more, 45 to 60 days. So, you know, you have to move on. And we understand at the university or at Cyril that agencies, nonprofits, are quite different in many ways because they have boards and they have advisory boards and committees and stakeholders. that sometimes have to make those decisions for them. Whereas an independent professor, investigator like Sherry or I, we can kind of do our own thing, right? We don't have to really ask, the advisory board for the College of Education if we can write this grant. I don't think you do you? You can just write a grant, right? I can just write a grant and decide that. But at nonprofits, that may not be true. So sometimes we've had problems with nonprofits getting back in a timely way. So you set a deadline, say, hey, if this is, what is it today, the 25th, I need to know by February 3rd. And I know you have your stakeholders and your culture is different, but I've got to have time to write a grant, figure it out. So we've run into that a few times, and don't feel bad about putting your foot down. And then if there's a decision to collaborate, then there's all those questions, right? Where will the project activities take place? And a lot of agencies, if you work with multiple agencies, like ownership, they like people coming in their door. Sometimes if you're collaborating with 5 agencies, which we've done in the past, we've said, hey, we can't have our clients, our young adults, 18 to 24, who don't have transportation, going to 3 or 4 different sites. So what is the site that we're going to use? And sometimes, if the site's close by, you still want a second site for privacy for, say, substance abuse counseling. Not every young adult wants to go to one center and then go, oh, I'm going to go into the substance abuse counseling door, right? Or the trauma door. So all those kind of come into play. Like a central place is great, but some needs for privacy may be beyond that. And then to think even further, like we have an adolescent program and we do HIV testing, and we go down to the county to do the HIV testing in kind of a group. A couple of things there is everybody participates in the post-test counseling, because then nobody really knows, like if only one person is asked to go to post-test counseling and that session takes 45 minutes, kind of understand you're losing your confidentiality. So thinking through all those things while you're writing the grant, not all of them will get resolved, but the more you can do that up front, that's great. The budget expectations. My philosophy is everybody has to have a piece of the budget. Okay, it doesn't have to be equal, but it's if you're going to really truly collaborate, honor people's salary, honor people's work, and make the budget expectations transparent, clear, and generous, even if it means taking a hit yourself. Who has access to the data, raw or summary data? We've often had grants where people ask after the fact, well, we need a copy of that data set, and then it takes us time to de-identify it if we promise confidentiality to the subjects. So working some of those things out, what kind of format, as much as possible in advance. If not, after you get started, discuss these things. And then in product development, webinars, curriculum books, manuals, who's on presentations, and then how will conflict be resolved? So in NIH, back to that, I've been the PI where they have a double PI. They actually ask you to submit, well, what if your double PI, myself and another PI, don't agree? So the NIH wants to know, how are you going to resolve that? What we proposed is having a five panel with expertise, 2 from my unit, 2 from the College of Medicine, and then 1 expertise that we both agree on that's associated with neither, to sort of come together and make that determination if that were in fact, thank goodness that's never happened to me, but I had to figure out a plan to put it in the grant. But I also thought at the time, that's kind of nifty that, you kind of think about these things in advance. And then ensure that every partner has a stake in the project. Like I said, voice, staff, money, outcomes, and a set of strategies in advance for achieving this. And some of that will probably be in your proposal anyway. But one of the things that is really helpful is if you have a large staff meeting, an all-staff meeting, is is to ask just about everybody, or at least each agency, say you have 5 agencies, like in your case, every agency, not just to report what they're doing, but maybe bring something special to the table or question. Because the participant usually will show up and be more engaged if their expertise is honored or if they're part of the show, right? So I always try to, in large meetings, is say, hey, are you working with clients? I know you're doing a lot of poetry writing with them, and some well-being, some self-compassion therapy. Are there any things that you can share from your participants that they might want to have shared with us? Some poem and counselors, us, they're just amazing. I could not do that. I don't have that muscle. And, for them to have that honor, go to their client, bring that into an all-staff meeting, and it just makes me weep. Like, that would go Sally. But, and for them to have that empowerment, that's cool. So those are kind of ways to bring the voices of the clients and also the people that are working really hard to make them part of the organizer, part of the program, and not just a talk at. Like, I'm talking at you guys, I'm sorry. But I do, try to really do that a lot more. All right, anything on that section? We're doing pretty good here, so feel free to chime in on other strategies that you use to get people to have voice at the table, to make sure that everybody's needs are honored. Strategies that work for you. I think one thing that really helps too, and it's probably somewhere in this handout, is always reminding ourselves of why we're doing the work. So that can kind of cut across everybody. I know that on the human trafficking grant that we're working on, we often will have a human trafficking survivor talk. And, it's emotionally beautiful and great to hear, but it also reminds us, of why we're sitting behind a computer doing poll truck survey, right? It reminds us of, really the broader picture, and that helps, very helpful too. All right, so I'm going to go on about identifying funding. We already said a little bit about thinking a couple of years out, but think about the political climate too and how it can work for you. Like with, for us, with Trump in office, the Department of Justice can be kind of a great way to apply for funding that is in our area, but maybe come at it from a different point of view. And you can frame that, again, being a saleswoman, is, that about Department of Justice and Homeland Security, but what other things can you do with those dollars, right? That maybe support migrants or undocumented people or train police officers or whatever. So, you think about the political climate and where you're going. Now, I guess we're not supposed to be using the word fetus or LGBT, etc. Think about how you write your abstracts. Okay, you might have to go underground a little bit to be able to do some of the work you want to do. A couple of things too in terms of funding. When you see a grant application and it says it's discretionary funds, be careful. Okay, so discretionary, a lot of the grant portfolios that come out are set and they'll have an expiration date. And I've only once in all the years that I've run $200 million worth of grants found that one grant was resolved in the last year. It was a NIDA grant, pregnant postpartum. And they said, we have the data, SAMHSA's going to take over this portfolio, we're going to close these NIDA grants earlier. We have shown in our NIDA grants, about 6 or 7 of us around the country, that having kids, pregnant women and kids in treatment works better, not. Wow. But we did prove that with the NIDA grant, about 6 of us across the country. So they said, we don't need any more data. The data's there. Let's let SAMHSA take over the portfolio. Of course, we've got pregnant and postpartum women and their children in our treatment program, right? And all of a sudden, we've got to find places for them within 30, 90 days. And, we went, to Washington and did a lot of advocacy work, and they reinstated that last year. Thank God. But that was the old days. That was back in the early 90s. And since then, I haven't ever had a grant. Has anybody here had like a grant awarded and then taken away? Even if, if it's a non-performance issue, it might be different. I haven't. But discretionary funds, read the fine line, if it's from a discretionary funds account, that is appropriated every year by the agency. So if you have a SAMHSA grant and it says, we're putting out this RFP, it's discretionary funds, they can fund you for 1 year. But if they want to change direction, they have no obligation or any oversight, or there's no really any place you can go. They can just take that money away. So be careful of discretionary funds. I have a discretionary fund grant, 5 years. You just are coming into year 3, it's not refunded. Administration wants to go in a different direction. I took a risk. I take risks every once in a while. As long as it's not too much of the serial portfolio, and I can save the staff, get them on other projects, I'm kind of okay with that. But yeah, it's a risk. Be careful. Let's see. Yeah, people often ask me, do you go after the money or do you go after the passion? I do a little bit of both. But if there's no passion, or relatively little passion, then no, don't go after money. You'll be happier if you have to go after the passion, right? But sometimes it's a workaround, or it's a work that will get you to where you want to go for your passion. Have others assist in identifying funding. If you've got a large staff, or you've got 5 or 6 people who are pretty good at looking at RFPs, but you got to do a little training. So many times I'll get staff when I was the director that will send me RFPs. This looks great, and then I read through it, and it's like only state agencies can apply, or there'll be different criteria. I'm like, so that then lands on me working 55 hours a week anyway to read all that fine print. So if you've got 5 staff that you think can review RFPs and really send you stuff, train them a little bit on what you can and can't apply for. Otherwise, you're just going to create a workload mess for yourself. Then there's listservs, of course, and there's the Federal Register, which is hard to read. I talked about new priority areas for different foundations, and kind of a great way in, because usually the first or second time around they don't have any applicants. And then in your handout you have Pivot, which is a really, I don't know, how many are familiar with Pivot? Oh, okay, good. Quite a few people. Our college actually supports it. It's a great way to find funding. If you want to look on it, you can just go right on their website and look, but really it provides multiple funding sources. They really go through looking from international sources covering all kinds of disciplines, etc. And they have actually focus on universities, and $70 billion of US dollars worth of funding they identify, and then 22,000 funding opportunities, and then a lot of research, training, scholarship opportunities. So you take a look on their portfolio, it's pretty amazing, and it's well organized. Sometimes you get on these websites, they're like searching all over the place, but you might want to take a look at that. Yeah.
So I teach a grant writing class every day from the School of Government and Public Policy. So I have a bunch of students, and their first 2 assignments are, one has to do with researching grant opportunities, and the second one has to do with keeping RFPs. And they always say, why are we doing this? I know exactly what they're talking about, because to read an RFP, you really know this company wants to go after, they will follow it, they realize halfway to it, this doesn't really work for us. And I'm mentioning it rightly to say that I'll have about a half a dozen of them graduating today, and
And you teach them too to look at, like, are you even eligible?
First thing, yeah, to really analyze the whole thing. That you, it helped me, and it saved me a lot of work when I called you, I think on a Samsung one a little while back and asked you about this, and you're like, you know, this kind of funding, you're not going to be eligible. I can't remember what it was. Save this money for, of like, not, you're already downtown excited about it, ready to go for it. When it happens, you have to be good, so that's all I really.
We worked on one grant, it was a huge grant, we're partnering with ASU, that other school up the road. And we didn't double space our budget justification. And it wasn't really huge. It was, I want to say $300 of work between everybody who put in. And our budget justification wasn't double spaced. Yeah. You know, just those kind of things where you're just like, oh, why am I living this life? So, yes, those, it's so important to have that, glad to teach you that class. That's great. Applying for grant funding. I think I kind of skipped that a little bit. Just, you know, get to know your funding agency. Do a little kind of look around. I'm just going to, some agencies do a look, a forecast. I've got the SAMHSA one here. Just about passes around. So you can go on, like on SAMHSA website, and you can see, you know, what they're forecasting, what they're coming up for the year. So I'll just pass that around. I highlighted all the names of the grants, not that you want them or not, but it just shows you that sometimes these larger agencies will forecast what they're putting out. With NIH, you know, they basically forecast them, you know, early. They have a deadline, like 3 or 5 year deadline. They're on most of them are on a rolling deadline for NIH. So you can see that kind of continually. SAMHSA does a yearly forecast. That's what I'm passing around. So you know when those grants are coming out, right? Because they won't legally don't have to provide those to you until like 45 or 60 days in advance. So sometimes they can get away with less if they've been sending you announcements that it's been delayed to get around that, get a workaround. So really looking at the SAMHSA forecast in advance is really helpful. So just a little bit there. NSF, I love NSF. I finally broke into NSF. Now I've had 3 of them, but NSF should, they're a great agency to work with. NSF is not usually acknowledged by nonprofits. And because it's all about National Science Foundation, it's about education, like innovative uses of teaching pedagogy in the undergraduate classroom to, you know, these different things, but they do have iTest, innovative technologies for students and teachers, something like that, which is one of mine. I worked out, you know, with a couple of school systems doing some flash in education with Native American students, something like after-school programs. A lot of them are funded by the iTest. So, and again, NSF is much more like NIH in terms of providing like a 2-year forecast. You go right on, look at the forecast and the deadlines of when those grants will expire. But the SAMHSA one will forecast every year. You just get on every year, and you're way ahead of the game. You start making partners, and everything's cool. So I'll pass that around. And then crafting your proposal, I just want to go through. Are we okay? Any questions there? Yes.
I have a question. It's about talking about watching for foundations that are pivoting.
Yes.
It's like, do you have a staff person who annually goes through and reviews your list of 20 foundations and what they're doing, or do you cultivate relationships with people at the foundations? Like, how are you collecting who's pivoting and what they're focusing on?
Well, I would love to have a staff person that does that, but no, I don't. And so I usually do. I usually have a few, like Spencer, Lovell. We all know those, Lovell, Mental Health, Spencer, that are in this area. I look to the Phoenix area. They have a lot more. Sometimes they'll be a little bit more statewide foundations if I'm looking for a smaller foundation. And I just keep my eye on them, you know, so I will go in, you know, if I'm looking for something and see if they pivoted a little bit. But that's, it's kind of hit or miss. Some of our partners in the Phoenix area, we work with Children's Action Alliance and Always, will also kind of be looking. So you start having this collaboration of people that, help out.
Just have a question. So
Sure.
when you were talking, it made me think of Piper Foundation, for
Yeah,
instance.
Piper
And I
Foundation.
thought, I keep hearing from people, oh no, Piper only funds Phoenix projects. And I think, well, what if we created a model or pilot in Tucson that could be expanded regionally? Would that be an approach to take with an organization like that, or is that just a waste of time?
Well, I would probably find a partner up in Phoenix and then do it in both areas. So I'd say find the partner in Phoenix that does it there, and then have them say what we want to do, replication or generalizability. Like we know we have one group here, but is it really replicable to maybe a different population than say, in southern Arizona, and we have them subcontract back to you. So, because I don't think they'll find out. Phoenix, I've heard of it.
I think so. I'm not, that's what I keep hearing. They have a class you can take once a month up at Piper to learn how to apply for their grants. So I think I'll start there and see where they're coming from.
Yeah, good idea. Went to the Alice Freeburg Reynolds Foundation. She only funds Houston, and then from the King Ranch. Remember the King Ranch? So, it comes from that kind of. But they like to fund things down in Texas, and on the border of San Antonio, mainly a little bit Houston. So I wrote a grant there to do a gender and sexuality conference in San Antonio. And they gave me money to fly people in to San Antonio. They wouldn't fund, so they funded University of Arizona, but I had to do the activity in San Antonio. So I put a conference on in San Antonio. Hey, it's a great city. They gave $15,000, and then one of the heirs gave another $5,000 personal check. We had $20,000 paid for people's airfare to get there, and had a group of about 30, 35 people. So, I mean, you can get creative with these foundations too, right? If they're only going to fund down there, well, they fund the activity down there, but fund the University of Arizona with the activities in Phoenix, San Antonio. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, so just a little bit more here is the review criteria. Yeah. And I got another handout I'll pass around here. You have the review criteria at a glance. This is NIH, and they really tell you right up front what they're looking for. This is NIH review criteria and everyone, and you can click on those links and see what they are looking for. They also legally are supposed to provide, it's hard to get, but funded projects. So sometimes you can even email the investigator and ask for the project narrative or pieces of it. Read the fine print. You've heard my story about our budget justification. Plan ahead. And then provide subcontractors items needed, templates, and deadlines. So now you have another handout that if I have time, I use, because sometimes you're down to 8 days writing a grant and you don't have time to do this, so you just throw it together and pray. But if you can, this type of letter is really helpful here. So you just send it to them. You notice I have highlighted in yellow the due date for the University of Arizona is 3 days before the due date, because we have to get it to our sponsored projects ahead of time. So make sure that's real clear. And I just put a couple of roles down. You could maybe have 5 agencies working on that, on a grant, but you have the applicant, say that's me there, and where I am, and then the applicant budget lead. I don't have a grant writer, but I do have someone that helps with the budget, so that's good. And then like you have a subcontractor one, who's the content lead, who are we gonna go to, right? Who's gonna come down the ladder, whose cell phone number can I have for a Saturday afternoon? And the budget lead. And so you kind of get that right up front, everybody knows who they're talking to, who's the lead, not too many people from any one agency, please. Sign letter of commitment, you can have a template, click right on the template, there it is, okay? Understanding of problem background, initial draft input, including any references. You know, when it's due, content lead, probably not a format, but you can, on the top, you can indicate the narrative, just simple things like font size, margin size, font type that you're using. So everybody, you're not, see, I don't have a grant writer. So that's me. Okay, that's me changing everybody's, you know, New Times Roman to something else. You know, when they have 1.15 space or is it double space, and you tell them you want one paragraph and they, you know, single space, and their paragraph's a page. So, you know, as much as you can get that done in advance, the better. Here's an approach to goals and timeline. The content lead, send that to the content lead. Again, probably not any kind of template you can have. But if you get down to key staff resumes, some agencies have a format, a required format, others don't. So kind of figure that out. But as a reviewer, because I've done so many reviews, that I think the more you can keep the reviewer from being frustrated, the better. Okay? You can have a beautiful application, but if you're frustrating that reviewer, you're not going to get funded. You could have all the I's dotted and T's crossed. If they're frustrated, they're not going to give you a good score. So try to think about that. Corporate capabilities, it's kind of nice to have a template attached if you can, and corporate experience, explain kind of what you want. Corporate facilities and resources, you can add, this is just an example, but then you got the budget spreadsheet, you know, send a template, okay? So just fill it in. Budget justification, our F&A, you can have it, your IDC, and any other supporting documentation that the grant has. So I find this really helpful is to kind of go through my grant application and kind of write down these things. If I have time, I send something like this out. That probably works for me about 50% of the time. The other 50%, it's like everybody got together too late, and it's like yesterday, and you know, just send me what you got, and I'll be there Sunday afternoon, fixing their stuff up. So is that helpful? Very. At the facility, does anybody know F&A? It's like your IDC, your indirect cost recovery. F&A, finance and admin. Thank you. All right. So just a couple of other things I want to talk about, and excuse me if this seems really like elementary school, but organization and grammar, again, like not frustrating the reviewer. Really think about learning theory. I'm not talking about like behavioralism or constructivism, but I'm talking about kind of how the brain works and how the brain internally processes information. Usually we talk about kind of cognitivism and how the brain chunks information or organizes it and links it. So one of the things I always like, if you're going to talk about mental health, substance abuse, and trauma, like the brain is good at chunking. So if you always talk about substance abuse first, then when you get to your instrumentation section, put your substance abuse assessments first. You talk about HIV second. You get to these different health and corporate capabilities. Everything should line up. So this one, I talk about this first, this goal, this one, this one. This section, come back, think about your teachers here. You want to review a little bit of the material, right? One sentence maybe. That's probably all I got one for. You refer them back, the brain, the reviewer brain, and then move on, remind them, that's that goal. Now we're going to tell you how we're going to assess it. analysis section, we're going to tell you we're going to start with substance abuse again, right? Because that's what you mentioned first. We're going to tell you how to analyze it. We're going to tell you our big corporate capabilities. What are we going to talk about first? We're going to talk about substance abuse first. Keep it lined up, the way the brain works. Right? Make those reviewers find the picture real easy. And then, let's see, what else did active or passive voice, right? If you want your grant application to be more sexy, then try to avoid that passive voice. So the assessment was completed by 80% of the women. That's passive voice, right? The assessment is being acted upon. The assessment was completed. So we want to change that, right? Flip it around. Kind of look for that passive voice. And then action-oriented too. The research has informed. That research informed. That research is now dead. It's not active anymore. The research informed. Research has informed. Well, is it not informing anymore? Then it's probably not a relevant grant. Okay, so you want to say the research informs. It's active. It's there. It's alive. It's doing things. So don't get that all that past tense. The research has informed. Oh, that's dead. Move on. Next grant. So, just things. Keep them engaged. Keep them excited. Don't frustrate them. All right, what else? Oh, strategies for effective partnerships. Anything else on crafting your proposal? Is that helpful? No, or is it like school?
Great. I think one other thing is just like have someone that's not in the field, just kind of like do a
Oh,
scan through.
great
Because
point.
I think, for me, writing grants has been so much, it's helped to be a reviewer because I know what it's like to be on the other side.
Yeah.
And so, if I have time, I'll have someone else look at it and sort of,
Change
just,
yeah.
just to say how to just resonate and strength. And I think that at the end, you want something that's going to happen.
And that they understand.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Have someone that maybe a tad bit in the field, not maybe an engineer or something that doesn't know what substance abuse is, but yeah, great point. Have somebody outside your group read it, because we'll read over, we know what we're thinking, but that is a really good point. And then the acronym thing too, if you have a chance and there's a spot for it, you can give an acronym list, up front so that the reviewer can just quick, like, oh, what is that? What is F&A? I don't know, I've used it so long, I don't know what idea what it is. So they can quickly go back and say, oh, yeah. Good point, thanks. Any other stuff on that crafting or Andrea? Michelle?
I would say each funder has their own unique organization that they want you to follow, and I would follow that exactly. Make that your outline. Have it on the side. Use exactly their terms. Strategic approach or background or whatever it is, because that will feel familiar to them, or make it easier for the reviewers to follow. If they're asking you questions, answer that question in the first line of the paragraph. This is exactly how we're going to eliminate health disparities, right? Make it really obvious. In a way that sometimes, when we do other writing or other presentations we build, it's like the opposite. Say in those first couple lines, what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it, why it's me.
Good point. No. It is a little different than particularly us academics have to come up with all this justification. Yes, Michelle?
I just said something about passive voices. In academia, passive voices was used in a lot of writing. And so when you do writing, it's like the voice is very subtle. Like it really wears on you. So, and then the other thing I was going to say is we applied for one of those vitalist grants. We did not win the salary. So if I know you're competing with you, I wouldn't
I am not the lead on it.
But, no, what I was gonna say is they need a generous offer, and I would say always take them up on it, is to meet with them afterwards. and
Oh,
find out why
I did not know they did that.
Because it might just be a case of apples or oranges. You know, if you're an apple and you're looking for an orange. And so it's nothing about, and so then that might be the opportunity to follow the other next time. And I have read a lot of proposals that other people do when they launch. And, you know, for me, it's just come down and find out what was the proposal and how it other things than ours. I've learned a lot from other folks who are following one. And for federal, for state, I don't know about for federal, but public, they're open documents once the money is awarded. So you have access to them. So I just,
It takes a little tracking down, but they are supposed to be public. That's, it's easier to email the investigator. They'll share sometimes pieces of it, usually not all. They'll make you work too. Okay, so I'm going to try to wrap up here by 10:02. I know someone here you were interested in sustainability, so try to get to that a little bit yet too. So we'll go through the strategies for effective partnerships. I think we've covered a lot of this. Setting and communicating expectations. So the grant proposal is a good document. You know, it's a legal document between you and the feds, but it's also a good document between, not necessarily legal, but between you and your sub-partners. Memorandums of understanding are good. Articulate core values, kind of where we are. I mean, we ask that in therapy groups, what are our group guidelines, what are our core values. We can ask that of ourselves too, take our own lessons to heart. Highlight workplace expectations. In academia, a lot of my staff are kind of used to being grad students and working remotely at home, which I think if that works for you is sometimes okay. What I always tell the staff at Ciro when I was director is, I expect you to be here most of the day, most days. You got a class in the middle of the day, fine. If you're not a morning person, you want to start at 10, I don't have a problem with that. I know nonprofits are probably a little different. We have a little bit more liberal workplace freedoms in the university. But I do like to have some overlap. I want to know when somebody's going to be in the office. So at least just kind of get that ballpark. So what are those expectations? What are the expectations for weekends and weekends? And so we all kind of know that up front. Consistent meetings with lead staff, and then consistent meetings with all staff, and talk about some strategies for including them. Understanding agencies' cultural differences and values. Cultural differences, like I said, I think, am I wrong, but nonprofits have stakeholders, right? Where you kind of have to run things by different groups. But university, Sherry and I can probably just write a grant, not have to ask anybody. Just kind of different. Non-judgmental. Everybody has their place, and there are different points of view. So try to be non-judgmental. And train on skills. One of the things that I think is fascinating is when we do get some of us collaborating together, that we offer a training on maybe developing an assessment or looking at data. Or I remember we worked with one school back in the day, and we're still doing their attendance by hand in a ledger. And so we developed a database for them and trained their front staff on the charter school and how to do that. It didn't take much for Sarah to do that, right? But gosh, that's nice. And then saying that we needed some parent input, and they organized a parent night for us to run our sexual health curriculum by them. So it's that kind of training on skills and sharing. Yeah, you can't ask somebody to go way overboard, but if it's 5 or 6 hours of work on somebody's part, it's just part of the partnership. My mother always said, I said, if you think you'll give it 50%, you probably give it 30%. Always overgive. So I thought that was a life learning lesson from Mom Stevens. Ensure all partner agencies have ownership in the project, again, transparency, equal voice at the table, primary partners have financial share. The branding of materials doesn't have to always be on a serial letterhead. Is there a letterhead that we can all agree upon? Putting people's different logos on it? Is that what they want? At least talk about it. Okay, we're getting there, aren't we? Project product development by agency skills and need. So we talked a little bit about that. What does each really want to achieve? What's their primary achievement on the grant? What do they want? Divide those products up. And then I also assess workload. Seems like sometimes we sometimes do it to ourselves, but sometimes one agency is really overworked. And then how do you can change that budget and give them a little bit more percent of the staff, right? Or figure out how to do that. But I think it's a responsibility of the PI to say, how we do them. We want people to stay in our field. We don't want them to walk away. We keep them happy. And let's look at and assess it and change it if we need to. Develop a culture of high expectations, continuous project improvement. Hey, we've got all 60 of those clients in, we've got an assessment done, we're good. Well, what else can we do, right? We got time. So always kind of looking, how do we improve? Build in reminders of why we're engaged in it. I talked about that before. And I think professional development of staff. A lot of times in social services, we can't pay people very much. Even at zero, we can't pay people as much as it worth. So what can you build in to retain them, especially the good staff? Come down and just go to a conference, professional development. So I think that's really good. And then use data to set priorities and strategies. Data feedback loops. We don't do this enough ourselves, but when we can, we really like to do it. You can do it with all kinds of stakeholders, some policy, administrators, clinicians, even participants who can give back data to and have them interpret it. And it's very empowering for them to tell you why the data looks like it is, right? So include them. It's kind of a non-hierarchical kind of way of doing things too, very feminist kind of approach. One that honors everybody wherever they're at in their life, or their economic status, or their age, or their gender, and then researchers who are similar fields. So I love to do that. Do data feedback loops. Again, we don't do it enough because it's always like the last thing. And it's so sad that we don't get time to do it, but we should. Anything on that? We have about 10 more minutes, so. Sorry, going a little faster here. All right, so just a little bit more about project products. The deliverables are often listed in the grant application, but you can develop a spreadsheet too and check in at your lead meetings about how we're doing on those and kind of keep them on the radar. The problem with like a journal publication or a manual, it doesn't have a deadline, so it often doesn't get done. It's my life. It's like, oh, how many unpublished journal articles, how many journal articles are half done? Agree to revisit authorship. We've come across this before, so-and-so says they want to take the lead, and then other people say they want to participate, and then the participation level drops by one or more people, and they still have an expectation to be on that publication because that's what it said on the spreadsheet. So I think really noting up front that, authorship, probably talking more for the university people, is not set in stone. Let's see who comes to the table who does the work, right? We can have a plan, but let's agree to change the plan. Because a lot of times you develop a webinar and somebody's supposed to develop their slides and don't get to them, and should they be an author in that webinar? In that training webinar? Probably not. Right? But they were listed. And so, and it gets people, ugh. lot of investment. So, data sharing, here's a data sharing agreement. This is one that we developed for Ciro. Now, you have to think about your IRB, so I didn't want to make a copy for everybody of it because it sort of depends on the grant, the level of data, and who's sharing the data, and whether you're exempt from IRB or not exempt. So I'm like, hey, I'm not putting this out that we can do this on every grant, but we do have a data sharing agreement that works on some of our projects. That doesn't have to go up a huge chain of command, especially if we're getting the data, which is nice. But you can kind of take a look at that. That might save some work. Certainly, in terms of data sharing agreements, you know, I think it really helps with the participants because then you're not necessarily collecting the same data for every agency, which really is good. Kind of decide again in advance who owns that data, you know, what kind of format do they want it back in, which might have to be de-identified. Be very careful too about 100% and 0% statistics. They basically give your identity away. So we're running a trauma focus group, it's got, or workshop, it's got 20 people in it, right? And so the agency says, we want the, you know, give us the data. So we go back and say, oh, we did this group with your 20 women that were in your agency, right? You should set up a group, they signed up for it, everybody's kind of knows who's in that group, right? From the agency, and you say, 100% of the women, 100% of the participants in that group experience sexual trauma. Or you just identified everybody in that group as having sexual trauma. None of the women in that group did X, right? So again, you're outing everybody. Even when it's around 95 or 5%, like I try to say, the vast majority, okay? I'm not going to give a percent. It's 80%. Okay, someone in here did not have sexual trauma, or whatever it is, right? 0% were U.S. citizens. You just outed everybody. You might want to say, you might want to say something like, when we really looked at citizenship, it was, you know, a lot of variations of the level of citizenship. There are levels of citizenship. You may not want to say anything at all. You want to kind of figure out a way to say it that doesn't out everybody. Okay? So just, especially with participants too, right? Where am I here? Okay. I think we're probably okay just on that dissemination. You know, one of the things like our particular DOJ, Department of Justice, they have a pretty long word they want you to put on all your products. So the more you can offer those in advance to your collaborators, if they're doing manual, so you say I'm doing research, the agency's doing manual, you'll offer those kind of statements. At an OJJ, Office of Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention Grant, and the statement was, you know, this long, single space. So we just passed that out. We're collaborating here, us, so as the lead, and then with Chestnut Health and with Carnivale. So we're in 3 different states. Oh, in Miami. So we had 4 collaborators, just us here, and then Miami, Washington D.C., and Bloomington, Illinois. So the more you can kind of get that stuff out, because you don't have to see everything they're putting out, the better. Give them some guidelines in advance. And I'll get to sustainability, because the sustainability is tough. And you mentioned it earlier, like, how do you sustain a project? You have maybe $1.5 million over 5 years, let's just say. You're doing some really great activities, but how do you sustain it? And a lot of the SAMHSA grants, in fact, allow you to apply again as long as you change it up a little. Sometimes they say if you're still in the field, you can't apply. So then you have this 1 year of downtime, which is troubling. So, I always like to say sustainability is probably one of the toughest things to do. And some of the things that I made a difference for us is to start early, think about it early. But also if we can cross-train staff. So thinking about our I-Team project where we had 6 collaborators, maybe. And so, on the LGBT plus sexual health curriculum, so it just wasn't safe and wingspan doing the curriculum, but we would also have someone from our family services and open in back then, have different people from different agencies sit in on the curriculum to learn it. And so trying to figure out ways to, even if you have to give a little bit of staff time to do that, even though the role as case manager or whatever, or researcher, to be able to sit through a couple of those sessions, a couple rounds of sessions during that 5-year period brings that expertise back to that agency. So it's going to be funding for it, but at least you have some building expertise at that level. So that's a good thing to do. And even, training folks on from the research side of, how do you do a good screener, right? How to actually do an assessment, like a screening assessment. Maybe they don't want to learn all about data analysis and stuff, but how can you do that? How can you get, maybe you can do it online to create a database. So university can train on that. And so just cross-training a little bit, it helps to at least keep some of those skills and share those skills across agencies. And creating templates and manuals is really good sustainability feature, so somebody can come back and see, well, how did you set that up? What were the steps involved? That helps. And then also look to others in the community that can help sustain you. I'm not talking about funding here, but I'm talking about people, or agencies. So, for instance, remember the Wingspan closed for a while, and then so Zero opened an LGBTQ center, but then we had that going for the youth and young adults. But then SAFE was able to pick that up later for the youth, and so then Zero began working more with the 18 to 36-year-olds. SIP wanted to work with 18 to 30, but there was needs and we expanded that. But really thinking about not so much as territorial of your project. It's hard to give up though, isn't it? It's not so much territorial, but trying to keep that kind of larger picture altruism. Like who can do this and who can take it on and what are the gaps and be willing. I think overall in life it'll all even out. So being able to look for other people that can pick up that piece of work from the project, especially if you can think of a manual or things that really helps. In terms of funding, I think about the little things in the grant that are, try to, if I could fund one thing, if I had $25,000 from going from a budget of $300,000 to $25,000, what is that one activity that I want to sustain? Is it the stakeholders group that's really committed? Is it the volunteers that we developed to be volunteer training and outreach group? Is that the thing that I want to sustain? Is it providing that one group to the parent caregivers? What is it? So I try to think, because I know it's just going to be said, that most likely I can't sustain it all. You either got to give it away or you're going to have to pick. And so, really thinking, what it is that data can support in terms of the next grant application. What is it in the community? What is that biggest gap? What would, little dollars, what could you fulfill? And then last, I think about university students. and is a great resource for sustainability. And so we've got great resources. We've got great students here at this university. People looking to do their PhD students, right? PhDs looking to do work, looking for a group to do data on, maybe some services. We also have the Peace Corps fellows that you guys probably can all access. We've got some great workers there. The AmeriCorps, another great resource. For us, if you want to link up with the Honors College, great students there. Provide internships. I'm sure Andrea provides internships. For professors, they're a little challenging because it's a big workload. But I find that if I can clump like 3 interns together on a project, then the oversight isn't quite as much, right? So if I got one intern doing this project, one intern doing this one doing that, I just feel like, oh my gosh, it's a lot to manage. But if I say, hey, if you all want to work on like kind of take on interns for the Women in Poverty Project, down at Sister Jose, then great, I've got 3. They're all kind of doing the same thing, but I'll check in with each other. We can do some peer support. So don't forget those university students. I think it's a win-win for our community to partner with university students and look for professors, in the university or units like the Honors College and those different groups like AmeriCorps, Peace Corps Fellows. Work study for us is great. Yeah.
So just to add, Sakina Almada from my advisory council also replaced ASU social work students who are doing their master's in social work and Eastern and work hours in the community. And she's always looking for places to place them. They would need somebody who has that training already to supervise them from an agency. But she's a great resource.
Yeah, it's a very great resource. We do need a clinical, social worker. I'm going to stop there. I actually have a class for my NSF grant. I'm doing assessment in the Poverty Project class. At 11, the GRA is going to start the class, but I need to enroll. It'll be done later on. That's over in social sciences. That starts at 11, so I need to be here by about 11, which is I think about 7 or 8 minutes. So I want to just ask you a couple things. Are there any last minute questions, or do you have my email? I put it on the spreadsheet over here. Well, it's probably in the Zero pamphlet too, but it's here. If you have any questions or follow-up questions, I'm available. And just overall, was it helpful? Was there things that could have been more helpful? And if you find you don't want to disclose that, I always know that helpful, but I want to say that right here. If you have ideas, that's the first time I've ever done something like this. So I'm happy to have feedback of what more you would like. You have my email. Or maybe a better presenter. And I'm hoping to be out in the community a little bit more now that I'm not a director. Let somebody else push those papers around. That's great. I can do more of the fun stuff. So anyway, and thank you so much for the great weekend and a great day. Thank you.
We have room for another 30 minutes, so there's no rush. If you want to stick around and network with each other, and there's still snacks left. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, that was great.
Oh, that's what's fun to do. So, it's not back now. It's come back. Okay, great. You've got my email, so it's all over the place. And I know you're doing the elder care stuff, right? Together. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Excited to have some teammates, so
Yeah.
I'll be following up.
Okay,
on
great.
that too.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Sally Stevenson. Terry Tariba. Say hi to you.
Oh, you recognize me. I recognized you. How are you?
Good. Yes, I gotta say, so this actually, I'm doing something, I don't know if you help or not, but this is just, it was great. I'm exploring.
Oh, okay, good. Are you exploring opportunities to work or?
No, I work here in faculty, but retail and consumer science in the North School. So, and I want to create a club of fashion. So I want to create a club of fashion, but I want to do it. The engineering students there. Yeah. And fashion's changing a lot.